Greetings everyone, and welcome to the AI World Summit 2020, organized by MyFinB Group. We'd like to thank you for attending this session today entitled The Future of Work, How AI and Robotics Affect Workforce and Management. Many job losses occurred as the COVID pandemic caused more businesses to shut down, even before the digital disruption takes its effects. It is undeniable that this pandemic has created a very strong incentive to automate the work of human beings. What do workers need to do now to reskill and upskill? Does it just affect regular workers, or even higher management is affected too all over the world? This track focuses on how management develops HR policies and talent development in future, and how the workforce can give what industry needs. We are deeply honored today to have our panel of speakers from France, Singapore, Australia, and USA moderated by Adjunct Practice Professor in AI, M. Nasri from Singapore. Our esteemed panelists comprise of Greetings everyone. Over to you, M. Nasri. The Amazon bestseller, and Anshul Sonak, who is the Senior Director of Global AI and Digital Readiness, a global partnership and initiatives group in Intel Corporation. Our third speaker, Philippa Penfold, is the CEO and co-founder of People Collider. Zarina Yusof is our fourth speaker, and she is the Acting Executive Director of AMP Singapore. The last speaker, Rudmila Norshin, is the founder and CEO of ConfigVR and ConfigRBot. Without much further ado, I leave the digital stage to the chairperson and moderator of this track to continue our session. Over to you, M. Nasri, and enjoy the session. Thank you.
May I start my video, please? Thank you. Now, throughout the year, we've been hearing about reskilling and upskilling activities, right? And year in, year out, month in, month out, we've been hearing a lot about the need to reskill, upskill. Whatever skills that we don't have, we need to achieve or attain new skills. Whatever skills we currently have, we need to apply it in many situations that we never thought before. So that's from an external standpoint, we witness how the digital disruption, the COVID, the unemployment factors basically impact the way we do things, right? And internally, we ask ourselves, what can we do better or adapt to a changing situation? Now, the future of workforce can never be addressed without recognizing what the present is doing to us and whether we are consciously aware of our limitations or the advancements that's been taking place, right? So in this case, I'm blessed and honored to have my co-speakers, panelists, members, right, who are here to basically share with us their insights, their thoughts, their views, not just about the future, but also the current state of situation. So where do they see things happening right now, and where do they see things happening towards the future? So I would like to invite Rudmila first to begin the session, okay, followed by Zarina, Anshul, Philippa, as well as Pascal towards the end. Yeah, so in that order. So right now, let us welcome Rudmila to give her perspectives on the future horizon and what she sees on what needs to be done today. Right, over to you, Rudmila. Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Nasri. Can you hear me good?
Loud and clear, Rudmila.
Okay.
How's things there in the States, Silicon Valley, right?
Yes. Things are actually getting a little difficult now again. So we started going out and we started to go to outdoor restaurants. But I think recently, because of the recent rise in the COVID, they're planning to put everything to close again. So let's see how it goes. But hopefully the situation gets better. My video is on, right? I can't.
Yes.
Okay. I'll just begin. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me today. It's a great honor for me. I'm really honored to be here today among all these, especially these renowned people and very respected name in the industries. So I'll just go ahead and start about today's topic. So observers today actually agree that the recent past will presage the near future with its reminder that automation in the last 30 years has actually delivered more jobs on for the economy than it destroyed. And that's what our main topic is today. So I just wanted to go over a little bit on automation and AI. And also I would like to just give a brief introduction of myself. I'm a founder and CEO of ConfigVR and ConfigureBot. ConfigVR does augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, and renders animation. And ConfigureBot, through that we do management tools. We build different kinds of customized robots. We do chatbots, AI solutions, and both my Config VR has been there for almost 4 years, and ConfigureBot is recently new. So I'll just go ahead on the topic of automation and AI. And I think every day we are actually seeing AI being used. So I thought I'll just start with my regular day and how a typical and how we use AI in our daily lives. So early morning when we wake up, we actually use Alexa or Siri or Google to just wake us up with a set alarm. And then it wakes us up, and then we can find out about the weather, the traffic. Those are all AI that we usually use on daily basis. And then many smart home devices include the ability to learn our behavioral patterns. And also it also helps us save money through those devices. So like, let's say the Nest thermostat, it actually is a smart thermostat, which actually helps us save energy. And also I don't personally like to vacuum, so Roomba helps out, which actually does the vacuum cleaning for us. So that's, let's say, that's the morning part. And then when you are driving, there are already cars on autopilot. So like Tesla's autopilot is one example where we are using AI through our daily lives. Then there is Spotify, if you want to listen to some music, which actually does through deep machine learning. It actually learns your choices and play music through different choices of yours. Then when we go to work, we use all kinds of different management tools. So we use through my company, we have different CRM, ERM, EKYC. So those kinds of apps are being used at work every day. So there's an app called Hemingway, which actually does primitive artificial intelligence that recognizes problems through natural language processing and polishes your writing structures. So it helps you save time and increase the readability of your work. And then as I work with cross-cultural teams, there's language barriers. So Skype actually translates through AI, whatever your meeting is about. And then for your conferences, there are different kinds of apps that we use on regular daily lives. And then let's come to Netflix. Once you get back home, Netflix recommends series and films based on the interest you have expressed and the judgments you have made in the past. So no need to you don't need really time searching and browsing. So we see AI in our daily lives, and I think e-commerce is another example which is getting smarter by the day. And then AI plays such a big role today in transforming HR and workforce, and which reduces human bias. It increases efficiency in candidate assessment. It improves relationships with employees. It improves the compliance. It increases adoption to metrics and improve workspace learning, and some of the benefits organizations are experiencing today. So I built this small presentation. I just quickly jotted down some notes on it. So I would like to present that now. I'll just share my screen. Mr. Nazri, if you have any questions, please do ask me.
you not to worry, especially from the Silicon Valley perspective. How do you see technology basically change the way we work, right? And will it be disruptive? Will it be constructive? Will it be inhibitive to what we do, or is it going to be impactful for us in such a way that it create more jobs? So that's the burning questions that you can expect audience to ask you a lot because of your fantastic automation. So what does it mean for workers, right? So there's a
Yeah.
favorite question that we get all the time. So, but I guess I'll leave it to, towards the end for Q&A, but let's hear you out. Thank you. Do you have the ability to share your slides? Has the admin given you
Yes,
the...
actually, I think I had to, can we, 1 second. Let me just pull up my slides. I'll just go back to the slides later on. I think I had to drop it in the Dropbox.
Okay. Would you like to share it with us too? Then maybe we can flash
Yes.
it at our end.
I actually did share it, but I don't
Oh, you
see
did.
the Dropbox.
Okay. Yeah, admin, can you please flash the deck by Rudmila? Thank you. So in your experience in Silicon Valley, right, do you see a lot of competition for AI technology to flourish, to compete with one another? I mean, was it very intense? And what has COVID done for players like yourself in order to create disruption and, achieve a certain level of innovation in the
So
marketplace?
specifically for COVID, we have come out with 3 different new robots, which is like a UV robot and which does sanitization through UV. And then we have a spray robot, which we also manufactured for especially for the COVID. And then there's one, so there are 3 different models that we have done. There are a lot of companies that's popping up every day. Robotics is advancing every single day. And actually in healthcare, there's a lot of investment going on. So in total, investors have poured about 4 billion into AI healthcare startups last year. And according to CB Insight, out of there has been a 26.6 billion raised by all private AI companies. And since 2014, more than 4,300 AI startups actually in 80 countries have raised about 83 billion globally, just in healthcare. And then for a human machine interface, just like I'll give an example for a Neuralink brain implant, there's a company which they work with stents. They have stent roads which can be used for paralytic people to move a robotic exoskeleton, and or just to use their thoughts to operate a computer, which I found very fascinating. Then there's pharmaceutical giant like Pfizer in late 2016 actually announced that it will be utilizing IBM Watson for the drug discovery. And Pfizer has also been using IBM's AI tech on its human immune oncology research. Yeah, I think my slides are up. So I think I'll go ahead with my slides then.
Please go ahead.
So as I was saying, so the global problems that AI could actually help us solve are in healthcare, which I was actually going over. So I actually gave example of Pfizer and the other stent company. So there's transportation, whereas Tesla Autopilot, we have we definitely have cars on autopilot. Then the education system is changing because of COVID. Everything is transferring online, and Zoom is also the shares of Zoom has been going out of the roof for the same reason, because everyone's doing their meetings on Zoom. Then management, we have different CRMs, ERM, HR tools for management. So there's AI in every single field, and there's information verification, which we also we can use for data those are not true on the online, because everyone can put whatever they want online. So there needs to be verification that if the data is actually valid or not. Then AI can be used for environment, for crisis response, for cybersecurity, social issues, manufacturing, workforce, and the list goes on. Can we go to the next slide, please? So AI, I'm sure all the AI experts are here today, so I'll just quickly go through what AI can do. It can find trends, patterns, and associations. It can discover inefficiency. It can execute plans. It can learn and become better with more data. And we can also predict future outcomes based on historical trends. And it can also inform fact-based decisions. So developing AI solution for public is actually challenging because of two reasons, which is the shortage of skilled machine learning engineers and data scientists. So in that scenario, I would definitely tell people, like everyone, to study more machine learning degrees. And also we need lot of data scientists, because there's a lot of data we need to go through for AI and robotics. And a PhD if anyone, for a data scientist, we always would prefer like a PhD person to get into like more in-depth knowledge to get hired for these kinds of work. And then there's another challenge is the data accessibility, and then there's AI and big data. So, and then there's cybersecurity. So like say for AI and big data, researchers actually have trained computer models to identify individuals' personality traits more accurately than their friends, based exclusively on what Facebook posts they like. So people actually know more about you through machines than actual interactions. And then for AI and cybersecurity, it's huge. Like there are cybersecurity losses, which we estimate, which the International Monetary Fund places have estimated that the range is from 100 to $250 billion annually for the global financial sector. So my 6 recommendations for business leaders as they integrate new AI-related strategies and technologies are to create teams to drive digital transformation in their enterprise, define an AI governing coalition for AI transformation, evaluate AI and workforce transformation readiness, set measurable objectives for digital and AI transformation, redefine digital and physical product innovation processes, and overinvest in communication for change and management. So most manufacturing companies are only beginning to realize the opportunities that's possible with AI actually. And businesses want to remain on the cutting edge of manufacturing innovation, and they need to implement policies that support and enable the use of the technology throughout their organization. So personally, we build ERM, CRM, HR management tools. So we do our part, but the company also needs to be adept, and the company also needs to have like really good engineers to actually run those software tools. So as an employer, we should always definitely try to make sure that our employees can run the tools that we are actually buying or getting for our companies to use. So this is just a chart that I took off the internet, which actually shows like the risk of jobs that for artificial intelligence or robotics, which can replace human jobs. So the highest numbers is definitely on manufacturing. And then for retail checkout clerk, we already do self-checkouts. And we also, whenever we go to grocery stores, we see machines doing our work, which actually before people, the retail, there wouldn't be a checkout clerk doing it, but actually a machine doing it for us. Then there's telemarketing. I'm sure we have all experienced bots calling us for through telemarketing. Then there's data entry. Then there's food services. There are different kinds of robots. Different companies are actually coming out with different kinds of robots to replace human being for doing repetitive tasks. So I know there's a company in San Francisco, which actually is just focusing on kitchen robots and robots that can be used for restaurants. For transportation drivers, we all know that we are going towards self-driving cars. Then there's metro rails that's automated. There's pharmacists, there's an account tax preparer, which actually is done through AI. There's insurance underwriters, so paralegals. So I think the chart explains itself. Can we have the next slide, please? So the benefits of AI and automation for HR and the workforce actually don't come instantly, and it's a journey that one can see the short-term benefits of this journey in automation and the medium-term benefits in augmentation, and finally the long-term benefits. So to automate, it's a short-term that we are right now in that phase. I think it's cost saving, improved UX and quality accuracy, whereas in the medium term, when we're looking at it, it's more of a self-learning activities, better predictions, interactions with human, and if you're looking to amplify in the long term, it's decision-making, autonomous work, and it's to boost human activities, for example, like cognitive analytics through robotics. These are a few examples of the companies which are working on lawyers, for teachers, assistants, for reporters and editors, and all these companies are actually the big names that are currently using AI for all these purposes. And this is just a chart that I got off the internet, which actually shows what kind of the percentage of work that is actually done on the daily basis of an office, where 82% is paperwork, and all these are actually replaceable through AI apps or management tools. Next slide, please. So what are the skills for the future? So how do the employers actually prepare their employees? I think these are the main focus points: that complex problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, people management, emotional intelligence, relationship making, negotiation, and cognitive flexibility. These are the skills that we need to prep ourselves with to be more adept in the future. And for the skills that are at risk nowadays, which can be replaced easily through machines, are logging and reporting, it's administrative jobs, physical labor, predictable analysis, and quality control, calibration, driving or riding, and information gathering. And already we see all this, happening in the recent world right now. Thank you. And I actually just wanted to play a short promo of the services we provide. If I have actually emailed it to the tech, if they can actually just play that for me, please. It's just a 20 seconds video. That's how we are trying to cope with the AI world, and that's what we have come up with. So if we can please have that now, right now.
All right, give me a moment.
Sure. So the combination of automation and robotics has already changed not only the workplace, but our everyday life. And just to give a quick example, I actually would like to, I read an interview of an Amazon employer. So her job was case stacking plastic bins at Amazon warehouse, and which was outsourced to a robot. And fortunately for her, that actually did not replace her, or she did not actually lose her job, but instead she now oversees the robotic arm stacking the beans, and she makes sure that everything goes well, and she oversees the robotic arm stacking the beans. So physically, she only needs to intervene only when there's like case of trouble. So she found her former task very boring and physically tiring, whereas when the robot is doing it, she actually in her new role has a greater responsibility, and she exercises her capacities for understanding and decision making, which I think is more fruitful than doing a repetitive task. And it's more mentally stimulating, and in her new role she has bigger responsibilities, and what she does and how she does it now actually makes a greater difference to the operation of the warehouse, and also before what she used to do, and it has actually become more meaningful to her. And robots were actually introduced to work alongside humans, so it's not that robots are actually replacing human being, but in combination, they're actually doing a better job, and which is much more efficient. So I honestly think that AI and robotics are actually truly helping us in every way possible. I think my promo is ready, so.
Okay, thank you very much, Rumila.
So the reason I
Excellent.
want to share this, Mr. Nazri, is because I think there was a question that what we as a company or as CEO and founders, what we are doing for today's world. I actually wanted to show because these are the services I think that can help the management, the HR, our robots can help the community. So that's why I thought it would be good to share the services, just a short clip. But thank you so much, and I hope I answered most of my stuff.
Yes, and I take it that you are of the belief that AI will create more jobs rather than replacing jobs. So we will leave that part of the discussion towards the end of the during the Q and A. Yeah. So I think a lot of questions will be thrown at you for that purpose about the replacement or the creation of jobs. So thank you so much for your insightful presentation. Such a dynamic young lady who has done a lot of wonders in the Silicon Valley, amongst others. So thank you so much for that. Now, I'm very privileged to introduce the next panelist, Mr. Anshul Sonak, Senior Director, Global AI and Digital Readiness in Intel. So I will let Anshul speak about his own profile, his organization, and the kind of wonderful things that he does. And hopefully, we will learn a lot from him by asking him lots of tough questions or hard truth about AI being transformational or transformative in nature. Over to you, Mr. Anshul.
Hey, hi, good morning. Can you hear me well?
Yes, loud and clear.
All right, I'll try to stick to 10-minute rule and be very precise. So thank you for the golden opportunity. I'm Anshul representing Intel. Intel Corporation, as you know, is world's largest semiconductor company, which creates all the foundational technologies which goes across all the emerging technologies, including AI. And AI as a new electricity, as we say, right? And as we create this new types of technologies, and AI is not just a technology, it's also a field of study, it's also a field of intelligence. It kind of cuts across all aspects of future of work. We have taken AI at our highest level, integral to our purpose, the corporate purpose, to enrich life of every person on earth, which is a big challenge because, as you can understand, today AI is not really demystified. Today AI is not democratized, so not everybody understands AI. And that's why probably only 5 to 6% of organizations worldwide are able to use it. AI knowledge, if it is left only to PhDs and some high-profile organizations, it will be very unfair to millions of people. It will create more inequality, right? And that's why understanding of AI not just as a technology, but understanding of AI beyond technology, right? With the wider social issues around AI, be it around ethics, biases, explainability, privacy, all those social aspects of AI become equally important. And as we think about the future of work from an AI standpoint, right, there's a lot going on, especially with double disruption we are seeing with COVID, right? COVID and automation hitting the whole economy together. That double disruption basically means work task itself is changing. I mean, 50% of the work task can be automated, as we say. Workforce has to change, and that's why hopefully new jobs will be created more than the jobs which are lost. And we just want that to be equal so that everywhere, everybody can really create job and not just those people who have PhDs in AI and data science, right? So workforce also is changing and workplace is also changing. So work task, workforce, workplace, all disruption coming together, right? Now here, because of this whole issue of AI not fully demystified and democratized, the larger workforce is right now not taking full benefit of AI, and which is what we really want to address in a much more holistic way. How do we demystify and democratize AI for the broader next generation workforce through education, through vocational skilling programs? What does all this upskilling, reskilling mean? There has to be a very concentrated partnership program and efforts. And today, when you really go to the next level, I mean, all kinds of tasks which are requiring hand, right? So manual tasks which require brain, so cognitive tasks, or tasks which require heart, so affective tasks, all are getting disrupted with AI. And again, I do not want to go and give it examples, but again, if you think about it, human machine partnership is getting redefined. Before AI, we used to take instructions from machines, but in a slightly different way. But now with this new human machine partnership with AI coming in, right, we have to figure out empowering next generation of workforce in a very inclusive way, so that you may be doing a nursing job and maybe wanting to use a robot nurse, right? How can you use AI responsibly? It doesn't have to be, again, privileged to high profile universities or high profile companies, but everybody. So we have created a whole holistic public private partnership solutions with the governments worldwide for empowering next generation of workforce on both AI technical skill as well as the non-technical or social skills around AI in a very inclusive way. At this point of time, I mean, this is probably the world's largest effort to train through government partnerships across schools, community colleges, as well as train organizations, both for disrupted workforce, displaced workforce, as well as at-risk workforce. So current workforce as well as future workforce in a much more holistic way. We piloted this earlier last year, and now these programs are available through governments in 11 countries. Just to give you a Singapore example, in Singapore, we roll it out with IMDA as well as with ITE. So ITE, as you can imagine, doesn't create workforce only for the high-tech economy. It creates workforce here for the regular manufacturing job, automobile, transportation, any sector, right? So how do we really do that? That's where you need a whole sustainable programmatic model, as I said. So that's what we offer to the governments and to the industry partners. With Intel support, Intel has whole skills content, technology, but also a whole way to implement it to really result to that outcome. And the outcome here is people should be able to not just learn AI skill, but more importantly, in a meaningful way, apply AI skill in a very responsible way. Because the bigger point here, which for the broader workforce and not just the tech workforce, is AI is not just technology or a tool set, as I said, and it doesn't just require a skill set, but it requires a whole new mindset. I mean, I'll give you a very simple narrative around the mindset. If Google can give you all the answers, what can we do better? What is the meaning of natural intelligence better, right? So the natural intelligence is, then we have to ask better questions. We have to have a far, better way to really understand with the real problems with far more sympathy. So I think those are some of the new solutions from a more human-centric, responsible AI standpoint. We want to really champion around the world. And we have really in all the countries we operate in, some very interesting results. I'll just give you one example, which can touch everybody's heart in that sense. So this
Hey,
girl's
Anshul,
picture, yep.
I'm sorry to interrupt you for a moment, but can we just request for you to change your slides to a participant view? Because we are looking at your presenter view and they have problem looking at your slides.
All right, can you see it now?
Yep.
All
Can
right.
you click the button on the bottom right?
Yeah,
next
that's
to
what I
the
had done. Yeah, but
but you have to switch it. Display settings on the top.
display settings on the top and swap presenter.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you see it now?
Have you clicked? Yes, it's perfect now. Thank you.
All right. So this girl's picture, I mean, this is one of the hundreds of thousands of girls coming from rural India, where we have a program with Government of India partnership. So she come from a background where her father and her family doesn't even know how to speak in English, come as a first generation English speaking in a coming to school. So she went through a program. She identified an issue of mental depression in her own grade 10 classrooms, used computer vision technology after learning some of the basic skills, and created or tweaked the algorithm to create something called Happiness Guru to really alert her own school teacher on which student have a higher risk of mental depression. Now, her school vetted the data with help of local psychologists and now using it to really create an alert in advance. So real prediction to her own school teachers for mental depression. And now this girl is on her path to become AI ethics lawyer. So a lawyer as a profession, we understand is changing, but how do we really get a people of that kind of a background coming from rural India who have otherwise no idea about AI to really learn AI responsibly and take an advantage of it and then apply to solve a real problem? I think this is where the future of work narrative has to move. It's nothing to do with technology. Technology is going to be very important and all of us will do good job in technology, I'm sure. But when we talk about a broader future of work, preparing people at a last mile to use AI responsibly, That is the whole point here. And if we are not able to do it, then we will create more AI divide, which will be very unfair to the wider society. So demystifying and democratize AI skill is our bigger mission in that sense. I gave you the example of Singapore ITE, India example. I mean, I can give you many examples. One example which I'm very proud of is in US with community colleges. For a first time community college in Maricopa, Arizona, we came up with an AI associate degree for the wider non-techie community college audience. So these are some of the new public-private partnership models we believe all of us together have to really foster with government, academia, and civil society come together, because this issue of AI divide, no one company can solve it. It's not going to be about my technology versus your technology. It's about collectively creating a right skill set and right mindset to really gain from the future of work. So our own call to action, which we have a public commitment, is to really build 30 government partnerships. You saw in last 1 year, we have 11 governments partnering with us. And we are taking this mission forward with 30,000 institutions, and we are committed to train through our corporate responsibility programs, 30 million people on current and future jobs. So that is what I wanted to share, to really expand the broader AI readiness for all in a very inclusive way. Thank you so much, and happy to take any questions.
Impressed and very attracted to some of the points you mentioned in the context of future of work. On one hand, we were talking about displacement and creation of new work. That's very much a widely debated topic. However, you have the transformational aspects of it, which comes in 4 portions, right? 4 parts. First, you mentioned technological, which is not the only part. Technological, there's a mindset, right? There's the exposures and the opportunities that you provide, Intel provides to the people for inclusivity and democratization of it. And last but not least is the what you call that, the status, or rather let me try to figure out my handwriting here. I was catching up with your points, yeah. So the 4 points so far are technological, mindset, exposures. Oh, the last one is structure, how you structure it as a PPP. Yeah. Right? Could you comment a little bit on which of these 4 elements? I know they are intertwined with one another, they are codependent one another, but which is the most critical factor in order to provide that transformational process that to elevate somebody's interest, capability into AI beyond technological part?
I think mindset today, the way the AI narrative is out there is, oh, it's going to take away all the jobs. It's very, very, intriguing technology, which only the big, universities or the big tech companies like Intel or Silicon Valley only have, right? How do I give the power of AI in rural Indonesia, in real rural community? I think that requires a whole different mindset. And that is, I think, all of us together have to do a far better job. There is a huge scope of improvement, because in any case, we are seeing double disruption. There is already a digital divide. And on top of it, AI divide will only augment this negative narrative, right? So if you have to change that narrative to a more positive, responsible, human-centric AI, right? Or human-machine partnership coming together for the benefit of humans, I think that is a whole different mindset. And that's where some of the examples which I was showing, really, you have to go to the grassroots level and show the power of AI, right? It's not about talking about AI in a conference like this, but really going to the grassroots, giving the true power of AI, the transformative power of AI at a last mile, right? And when people touch it, people can build solution around it. Then only they start thinking that, oh, AI is not only about job loss. I can use AI. And again, as I said, right, all the 3 domains of work task, the task which require hand. I mean, for example, if you look at Japan, the crop spraying, 70 to 80% of crop spraying agricultural jobs have disappeared just last 3 years because of robotics and IoT coming into it, right? So now how do I train those Japanese farmers to really responsibly use AI? If I can do it very well, then the other countries, the emerging countries like in Africa or India or Indonesia, right, they will learn from it responsibly. But if we are not able to do it, then the narrative will only go towards this irresponsible use of AI. And it's not just manual task, it's a cognitive task, lawyer job, the financial advisory job, right? Or even effective domains like nursing job. Everywhere AI is coming in. It's collectively that mindset which is the biggest issue, which is a big responsibility.
So you mentioned about a human-machine engagement. Before we move on to Zarina, I have one quick question for you before we push more towards the Q&A segment. We've spoken about AI as in artificial intelligence. You spoke about human-machine engagement, which certainly delves into the augmented intelligence part, right? What are your comments about AI versus the artificial intelligence part versus the augmented intelligence? Are we moving towards augmented rather than just creating artificial intelligence for the sake of automating things? Because you mentioned a lot on the human aspects of it. So can you comment a little bit about your thoughts about augmented intelligence and how this should be the way forward if you think it is? How can augmented intelligence be a successful concept to be adopted, applied downstream, like you said, to the last mile?
Right. I think the augmented intelligence or a collective intelligence field is evolving. People put it in a silo sometime, how AI can come in education and how AI education itself works. We have to bridge that gap, right? I mean, we are doing this one big effort again in India with Central Board of Secondary Education to really use AI to, embed it into day-to-day teaching of math, science, social science, local languages, history, because the research says that our own natural intelligence, for example, geography map reading skill, which at least in my generation we all had, but in today's generation, the geography map reading skills are going down. So coming to that point of natural intelligence, if it starts going down because artificial intelligence with GPS technologies and Google and all goes up, it's not fair, right? I think the big point here is, and for all the friends who are in workforce readiness or the education segment standpoint, it's a big responsibility to create environment for that augmented intelligence. If Google can give you all the answers, what can we do better? I think that's the point we should never forget, right? I mean, we can have a better questions. And again, we did a big research, which is called fusion skills. If you can Google it, and there's a lot available on that. What skills which human and machine together can do differently, right? And broadly, it comes down to 3 meta skills: sustainer, explainer, and trainer skills. These are the kind of skills which will require a more long-term job creation, not just technology job, but across all: transportation, healthcare, manufacturing, everything, right? So we need to really foster these 3 meta skills: sustainer, trainer, explainers, to really create a better human machine partnership. And that's the collective intelligence or augmentative intelligence we want to foster here. Thank you.
Well said. Speaking of human, speaking of community, speaking of inclusivity, I'm very proud to bring along Zarina into the picture, and she will share with us some of her experience using AI in partnership with private sector like us on how she uses it for community-based research, community-based engagement, and community-based transformational work. Okay, so let us welcome now together Zarina from the AMP Singapore. Over to you, Zarina.
Thank you, Nazri. Good morning, everybody. I'm not so sure how many representatives from the social service sectors are out there, but I think this is one sector that I think could really do with a little bit more introduction to AI. Being a social service agency, AMP, of course, has seen firsthand the effects and the impact of COVID-19 on the employment and the workforce. And I think, we do need to catch up in this area. But before I talk more about how we help the workforce in AMP embrace not just technology but AI, I'm going to share a little bit more of how we use AI in our daily work, so that I know at least the attendees and panelists would have a better idea of how we do how we do that. Okay, let me see if I can just navigate these slides of mine. Okay, hang on. It doesn't seem to be moving. So, all right, maybe I think Secretary need to help me out with this. So next slide, please. All right, thank you. So to date, AI, or rather AMP has been using AI in these various areas. We have used AI to measure the effectiveness of a program. We also used it to generate insights on commonly discussed issues in the community, because we do have a lot of research going on for us. And as someone who champions and advocates solutioning for some of the issues that we see, we do depend a lot on evidence-based information. And as we move along, fundraising has been, of course, it is a very important component of our work. We would like to, look at AI to improve our donor experience as well. So next slide, please. Next slide, please. All right. So in Singapore, there are around 440 social service agencies. And these social service agencies could actually reach out to a variety of causes, from championing the lives of abandoned pets to the disabled community. And as a social service agency, we are considered as a helping profession. So our workforce consists of social workers, counselors, therapies, as well as case workers. So when you talk about automation and robotics and all that, I'm not quite sure how that could replace the effective aspect of the work. But we do a lot of data entry as well. Most of it are repetitive. And I guess this is where AI could actually really help us out in reducing the monotony and the mundaneness of this work. So some of the work that we do, some of the programs that we have carried out are actually dedicated to the Malay Muslim community in Singapore. And for those, because I understand this summit is beamed throughout the world, right? So I'm not so sure whether you're familiar with Singapore, but Singapore is made up of different ethnic groups. Majority of them are Chinese, while Malays and Indians make up the minority ethnic groups. So some of our work dedicated to the Malay Muslim group. And to date, we have actually reached out to more than 390,000 beneficiaries since its inception 30 years ago. And what you see on screen right now is a snapshot of the various clients and beneficiaries that we see. So we help out the low-income groups, or rather the low-income families in our community. For couples, we provide marital counseling. For youth, we provide youth empowerment and counseling as well. For students, we raise funds and to give them education bursary. For debtors, we give them free advice on how to navigate, or rather to have solutions on their debt repayment issues. For professionals, workers, and small business owners, we carry out, or rather we conduct seminars, workshops, and even give out microloans for those who really need it. All right, next slide, please. Before I go on to share our experience with AI, just want to let everybody in on how actually AMP started. So introduced 30 years ago into the social services sector in Singapore, this AMP is actually a result of a convention that was held in 1990. This convention is held actually every 10 years. And every 10 years, we will conduct a perception study. Why do we think this is important? Because we need to understand what are the emerging issues that are pertinent to the community. And one could argue that yes, a decade could be very long to monitor the trends of social issues and concerns. But in order for us to understand the sentiments, the trends, and to come up with good solutions, we believe that we could use with that time. However, we realize that the perception study that we used to do every decade is only field work, right? And as we move on with social media taking a lot more emphasis and significance, we realized that perhaps field work is just not enough. So this year, what we did was to augment the fieldwork research. We have decided to use AI technology to study, or rather to glean richer insights into social media conversations on issues that matter most to netizens. And what we intend to do is we want to triangulate this data, and then data from the social media to the data gathered from the field research. So next slide, please. So what happened is that we use AI technology to process hundreds of thousands of articles, and I really mean hundreds and thousands of articles because I think we took a look at a 10-year period to measure the sentiments, to measure the kind of engagement that the netizens have on various specific topics. So we have we kind of fit into the technology, specific keywords or topics relevant to the Malay Muslim community, and the relationship of the variables or strength of the sentiments attached to the topics, the reactions of the community then were collated, studied and measured. And since AI looked at the traditional media and social media, we believe that we cut across various aspects or various profiles of the community. So the sentiment measurement is done through the use of AI technology to study the patterns, the tone, the context, relationship amongst variables, and consistency of the reactions over a period of time. And of course, you know, this involves the extraction of voluminous amount of information over a 10-year period. So this is something that we're quite excited to consider using regularly over the years, because as we move on, more people are getting more vocal, especially over the social media, and we feel that there is a need to monitor the kind of impact this engagement is getting and how it is actually influencing solutions and conversations over the years. Okay, next please. That was what we did for today, for this year, for the AI project that we did for this year. But our foray into AI is really not very new. We first incorporated AI into our work way back in 2014 to review the effectiveness of a program, which is called Adopt a Family and Youth Scheme. And because of the length of the length of the program where it was introduced, it was actually a very long, very old program. We have a lot of information. So what we did was, again, you know, we use AI to ensure that we are on the right track and ensuring that the outcomes of the program is something that, you know, we want, we can be proud of. So some of the outcomes of this program include achieving its intended outcomes, such as increased level of income per household, because we do want to ensure that a family has financial stability. The adults in the family are economically empowered, children on track for post-secondary education, and of course, a stable family unit. Next slide, please. So after the AI input, this is what we get. So as you can see, it would be quite impossible, or it's possible maybe, but it might take a long time for the staff to actually come up with this kind of matrix, where we are able to see the kind of families who need that extra help more. Right, so you know, in quadrant C, we will realize that these families require a lot of intervention, for example, you know, to help them level up. So this is what AI has been doing. I think this is something that is extremely useful for social services sector, because sometimes it's difficult to ensure that, you know, your programs is evidence based. We would all think that, you know, our programs are good, doing something good for the community, but how do we provide evidence for it? So it is something like this that would be very useful for each agency. Next slide, please. And this is something that we are trying to dabble with right now. Okay, now I think we've gotten we're bitten by the AI bug. So we're trying to introduce chatbot into our fundraising efforts. And we are hoping that with this chatbot, we are able to actually release some kind of work from our helpliners, because we're going to program some questions into this chatbot. So at least they will. Okay, so at least they will be able to answer certain frequently asked questions that will release the helpliners from answering this. And we also hope that with this chatbot, the donor engagement would actually be increased, and we can understand certain profiles of the donors, of our donors, so that we could actually enhance offline engagement with them as well. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, what next for AI for the social services sector? I think my two previous panelists have rightly pointed out that, you know, AI and other technology could actually help out in the menial, repetitive aspect of the work. And I totally agree, because in the social services sector, we do a lot of collating, imputing primary data before we can actually continue with real casework, right? And I think this is something that could really help out in reducing the burden of administrative work on each of the social worker and caseworker, because I think, you know, the primary data imputing is immense, right? And then if you were to cut across all aspects of social assistance, which include financial assistance, this is something that is also very, very important. AI could also be used to select partners that agencies could work with to leverage on existing programs, because all of us are experts in different areas. So for AMP Singapore, we would normally be considered as one of those pioneers in holistic family work, for example, or debt advisory. So, this is something that I think we could also offer to other agencies. And if, let's say, we are able to detect who can provide what kind of service in quick time, and then more families would actually be impacted with our work. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, then how do we how rather the workforce can be changed in the social services sector to accept and embrace AI? Okay, I think it has got to do a lot with change management. It has to be the culture, right? So I think Rudmila and Anshul have actually made inferences to it. The need for the need for creativity, for example, the need for courage to explore different ways, because sometimes what is needed is actually a top to bottom kind of change, not just the workforce, but the management. So just like many other social agencies in Singapore, we have a board of directors. Change has got to be embraced at that level as well. So the board must believe in technology, the board must believe in AI, so that, change to the workforce could be more effective and could even be made more efficient. The workforce has got to embrace the fact that, they are not going to be phased out with AI. In fact, their work is going to be made more efficient. They're going to be made more productive because of AI. And I think the workforce in AMP Singapore is beginning to understand that, thankfully, right? And then the commitment, because I think there will always be a lot of curveballs, when it comes to social services sector in Singapore. Budget is always one thing, right? Yeah, so we have to also be cognizant of how much investment we need to make and how sustainable that is. And what's the balance like, right, between incorporating technology and AI and also helping out those who really need our help. So I think there is a need for a balance of that. So, those AI providers out there, you have to make this affordable for us because otherwise it's very difficult for us to go on a 360 degrees turn. And of course, if, you have to change that mindset, because people may think that, okay, it's so expensive, right? To embrace technology, I have to change my whole working system. I have to change my whole, management system. But if you can show us how it can be done with as little pain as possible and with, affordability in the, in mind, then of course, the sector could very well move along as well as any other sectors when it comes to technology and AI. And I guess that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zarina. I could not help a smile, at the same time feel very proud of the things that you do and the things that AMP does in Singapore for the community. Now, you mentioned a lot about the developmental aspects of of AI for AMP, right? And in the line of work that the organization does and the thing that you do, right? There's a lot of reliance on data, correct?
Yes.
So you deal with data, you deal with human complexities, incarcerated people, family, divorce, couples, right? Broken down family, juvenile kids, and so on and so forth. How critical is data when it comes to analyzing very complex, delicate issues like that? Because from AI standpoint, we have seen how AI is applied on, let's say, manufacturing data, fintech data, right? Very, very structured, very, transactional, e-commerce, etc. But now you're dealing with human complexities, right? So there's a lot of social issues, social-related data associated with that. I'm sure Anshul and the rest can add on to it. And I can't wait for Philippa to come in with the developmental aspects of it. What I like about this track is everything is so developmental for this first track, right? So, but maybe I pose a question to Zarina on that part. How do you deal and how critical is that human data, the complex part of the human, data in this whole exercise?
Extremely important. I think, yes, we do handle each family as a unique unit, right? But if let's say you were to go through the process and you have seen many families in a year or in a period of 3 to 5 years, you realize that there is a pattern to this complex human behavior, the profile to this complex human behavior. And I think that is critical, because once you understand the profile, once you understand the trend, you could study it. And I'm very much a data person. I'm very much an evidence-based person. Then you can actually qualify why you're doing some of the things that you do. And once you start comparing all this data, then you realize that maybe times are changing. You know, the things that we did last time may not be as effective to this profile of people, because people are always changing, right? So it is important for us to collect that data and to ensure that whatever that we're doing 10 years ago is still relevant. It is still working as well as it did the last time round. So that is something that is very important, because people change. And I think people are changing faster this time round than it used to be, right? So we have to keep up with that. And I can tell you that some of the social agencies are not keeping up as fast, or have issues keeping up, because of this, load of data collection. But we really sometimes do not know, okay, how do we feed this data into what kind of collation and things like that? And how do we make sense of this? Yeah, so that's the kind of world that we are dealing with right now.
Are you saying, as what Ruth was saying earlier, right, Rila, about social service agencies now got to hire more data scientists within the
Okay, I've got no
organization?
money for that. Okay, so you guys again
So
got to
the
make it
big
more
question is,
affordable.
Rumila, the question for Rumila is, are data scientists very expensive for social service agency to hire, right? So now there's this perception that AI is expensive, right? AI is very unreachable, it's not so democratized, and now the talents are so limited and scarce. So, but I leave that again to the Q&A part. I have lots of, and we have lots of questions coming in from the audience. But essentially, let us pass it over to Philippa, who comes from a very, very HR, human capital, developmental centric in the realms of technology. Philippa, we can't wait to hear from you. Over to you, Philippa. Please introduce yourself, the things that you do, and then what you feel about, your fellow panelists have been talking about the displacement side, the creation part of jobs, the transformational part, the mindset, and now the social stroke community angle to it. It seems that AI cuts across business, community, government, and the industries, as well as the community, individuals and communities. So what are your thoughts about that, Philippa? Over to you.
Okay, lots of thoughts. Thank you very much for the introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Philippa. Please call me Pip. Everyone does. After 20 years in HR and a lot of technology implementations, I moved into teach HR people about new and emerging technologies, or as we know for AI, actually re-emerging technologies. So today, what I'm going to talk about is a few things. I'm not going to give you any slides. I knew there'd be technical problems and we'd be running over, so I'm not doing any slides. I'm just going to pick up 2 points that have been raised. In fact, the second point I wanted to talk about today has only just been mentioned, so I'll leave it to last. The first thing, so I just want to talk to you about 2 things, trust and design. Let's start with design. We've heard a lot about the design of work, the design of jobs. That jobs, we're talking about whole jobs. Will there be how many jobs? Are we going to get rid of jobs? Are we going to keep jobs? And we've seen it, World Economic Forum and so forth, putting out a lot of data out about, is there going to be enough jobs for everyone? Jobs is actually not the problem. Skills, capabilities, and tasks is the problem. Okay, so what AI requires in the workforce will require us to do is very different to what we've done before. This is why you hear a lot about the reskilling or upskilling of employees. In fact, technology and AI is doing exactly what the manufacturing line did back in Ford's day. Okay, you're probably thinking, why on earth would I be talking about manufacturing as AI? But in fact, a lot of the things that I am seeing are very similar. We approach it with an efficiency priority. You would have heard a lot today about efficiency, productivity. This is exactly the same for any technology that we've looked at back in time. A lot of the problems that we're seeing are very similar as well, about people having to adjust themselves to the technology. Now, let's just stop for a moment, because we always talk about augmentation and amplification, and they're great words, but we're a long way from that. And it's mostly to do with how we view the technology, how we use the technology, and the purpose for which we are using the technology. With an efficiency priority, with a productivity primacy, that's what we're going to focus on. We're going to use it to be able to take out what everyone calls the non-human tasks, the stuff that is boring, the stuff we don't like, the stuff that the robots can do better. And that's great, but we often are missing the point about what creates an interesting job. What type of job satisfies a human being? It's not a job that utilizes our skills 100% of the time, nor is it a job that utilizes the best of artificial intelligence 100% of the time. It's a balance between the two. Have we ever chosen to implement artificial intelligence in a way that balances the jobs so that they are most interesting to people? We talk about using AI to bring the human back into HR or make a tech-enabled human workplace. But I very rarely see decisions being made about, is there a decision that's being managed by an algorithm or made by an algorithm managing a person? Is it an appropriate decision? How will humans respond to it? There are some studies that are showing that we are responding well to being managed by algorithms, and some not so much. In some instances, there's some information we would rather hear from AI rather than another human being. Now, when we look at the jobs, it is very easy to say everything could be automated, because it's true. Everything could be today. It might be a little bit creaky, but pretty much everything could be. That's not the question we need to ask ourselves as we move into an augmentation field. The question is, what should be? How are we structuring work to get the best out of people? The Tayloristic approach, the scientific management approach about using technology to drive efficiency will not get us there. And this is where I think Anshul was very accurate when he said we need to change the mindset. Our relationship with technology needs to change so that when we design jobs, when we design organizations, when we design workplaces, we are doing so in the best interest of the human being as well as the business, rather than the business first. There's a lot more on that, but I'll leave it to the questions. I'm happy to take one question. I can see you smiling there, Professor. So please feel free to ask one now before I go on to the second topic of trust, if you like.
Line of work that you do, whether it's HR, whether it's training, aspects of HR, the developmental side of it, what do you see as the top challenges, amongst the people? And do they have an age profile that shows resistance or acceptance towards adopting AI-based skills? I mean,
Okay.
I mean,
Let me start with the last one
obvious.
because it's easy. No.
We
always think that older people are worse. No, it's not the case. I would say there are some studies that have tried to prove it's the case, but it's not necessarily. It may be because of who is in the role, and you'll find different demographics in a role than you would somewhere else. But if you took everything out and just looked at age, no, there is no correlation.
That's very interesting. Very interesting. Is this something that you experience, observe in Australia or anywhere else in the world?
So most of my work has been based in Asia. I spent nearly a decade in Singapore. So I think my experience in Singapore has already exceeded my experience in Australia over the course of my career. I would say that it depends. If we're looking at a marketplace, if I look at a country, what changes is the average age of people in the country. So, for example, Indonesia has a very young demographic compared to Singapore. Singapore, I think, is 40. Indonesia is 26. The likelihood of adjusting and adopting technology, it's a lot more rapid in Indonesia. And it's not necessarily because they are younger, it's because the systems that are in place are not as well, let's say, instituted as they are in Singapore. There's huge systemic issues in Singapore that we need to break down to be able to adopt it. The average worker is very old, the hierarchy is very strict. There are certain things that we would need to change to be able to adopt technology more readily than, say, somewhere like Indonesia. There are similarities, but it's not only the age that is the issue here. I'll come back to your first part of the question later on, if I may.
So there is no clear pattern in terms of age group. There's no...
I'm curious to know why you keep asking. Is everyone believing that this is the case?
No.
Or are we trying to blow up an idea?
There's a lot of, I guess, complaints, right? A lot of browsers about how technology is not so readily accepted by the matured audience, and that they assume that the millennials and when you try to create a fintech or payment tech business, right? Oh, only the younger generation or segment of the population would be using it, right? Would be transacting with it, as opposed.
I don't think you need to hide your age on your CV. I do not see a problem with it. There is certainly a mindset issue, but it is not. It's not associated with age.
Okay,
not as much as people think.
So all the tech players out there, please listen to Pip, right, Philippa, who says that age is not a barrier to adopting, learning new technology.
Absolutely not. In fact, what I would suggest is, going back to what Anshul said, what we need to understand is the mindset of the people. Yes, there will be a barrier. It's not an age one. In fact, we know AI, okay? So we know bias is a problem in AI. We know that if we want to eliminate bias, that, say, we've got an issue with, in America, Black African Americans or white Americans. You can take out the race, the field that says that, but often the postcode, if it's left behind, subsequent, because, postcodes are almost a default for race. But it's not 100% accurate. In fact, it may create a biased outcome. It's not going to produce an optimal outcome, and it's not going to be as correlated as we think it. In some instances, as we think. I think age is much the same. Okay, you can, if you strip out age, the question is, what is the problem? And it is a mindset problem. It's a how people view technology issue. You need to go into that. Now, you may find more people of an older generation that are older with that problem, but I would suspect it depends on where you're recruiting. And it's not because of the age, it's because of the structure that they have been, that they have grown up in. I can speak to someone 50 years old in Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh, and someone else in Indonesia, and someone else in Singapore. I'll tell you, they're completely different people. Their mindset, their experience in work, it is completely different. It's got very little to do with age, very little to do with age.
I tend to agree with you because a lot of our AI adopters in our portfolio lies in the more experienced, more matured category. And it caught us by surprise because we didn't plan for that, right? But you can see that the older, matured audience tend to look at the applications, the outcome, and the output of it rather than the process of it. So I think I tend to agree with your findings. But for those tech providers or service providers out there, listen to Pip when she says that age is no barrier, age is no, it's not an issue, not an obstacle.
There are numbers that matter more. I wanted to just touch on my second point before I hand over. I know we've got Pascal's recording before we open to questions, and I want to make sure that the audience can ask a lot of questions. The second issue I wanted to talk about was trust. And so Rena did mention part of this when in answer to your question, Mr. Nasri. The question of trust, it comes back to what I've been looking at from a data perspective. Now, we know AI, it eats data and it produces data, okay, and it manipulates it internally. Now, in workplaces generally, we accept that our data belongs to the organization and that they can make decisions based on our data. We have this contract with governments. We have this contract with the likes of Facebook and everyone, that we are giving them access to our data to use. Now, luckily at the moment in organizations, according to the last Edelman Trust Barometer, people are trusting their employers more than anyone else, more than their governments, more than other social systems. But I can see some cracks already forming where organizations are using employee data, not just the data that they are provided, but data that they are scraping, harvesting, collecting through employment and manipulating for a certain outcome. And that, let's face it, that's the purpose of AI, to manipulate data in ways that is beneficial. The question is beneficial to who? Now, usually when we are looking at, this is why Zarina's example is so important. In social work, the manipulation of the data is for the benefit of the individual, whether they feel it or not. That is the goal. Zarina, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the goal of using the data, figuring out how we can help them more. Now, that's great in social services, but it's not the same in organizations. We do not necessarily manipulate data in order to help our employees. We do it to help our employees be more productive. We do it to help our employees reduce our cost. We do it primarily for the business. So at the moment, I think that we are in a unique and potentially short-lived period where we have the trust of our employees. They trust us with our data. They trust us as employers with our data, though they have zero control. So we have their consent, we have it legally, but they do not have control. In fact, most of the data that we manipulate and the data that we produce, we don't give to them. In fact, they have no access. We use it for the organization. I believe that we need to address this, specifically leadership and HR, to understand that compliance is no longer sufficient. Most people will say it's in the contract. You have to, it's legal, it's fine. No, it's not. Compliance isn't going to be insufficient very soon because of the way these tools manipulate data and the outcomes and the purpose of that manipulation. So I think we've got to rethink something that goes alongside AI, because without data, AI is nothing. It's nothing more than a shell. But to understand the combination, because it will influence the acceptance of AI and going back to the earlier question or topic I raised, being managed by an algorithm, trusting the tools that we are using in the workplace, that very trust will be undermined by in the tools itself and ultimately in the organization.
And just to play devil's advocate to your last point, do you think that it takes two hands to clap? Because people these days are quite transparent about their social lives. They put up everything out there, whether their hobbies, livelihood, their purchases, their likes, dislikes, their opinions, their views out in the social media, out in the open platform. And would it be wrong for those data scientists, data management to extract public information like that and, like as you said, turn it into a marketing exercise, turn it into a profit pursuit, and without that, I mean, I assume that is done in a legal way, right? They don't like scrape behind or hack into your system, but assuming that these are in public domains and the people themselves are changing and they start becoming more visible, more transparent, more open about their lifestyle, their purchases, and so on, would it be fair to blame squarely on the corporations and institutions on the issue of trust? Or do you think that the humans need to be educated?
I would never suggest that it's the responsibility of organizations alone. All I'm doing is warning them that the trust that we currently have, we cannot depend upon. Because if you think about, so we know that organizations, how they use their data, we know that it's legal. And we have this conversation often. It's the purpose of the manipulation. Okay, so you said it was a profit motive. Marketing is very clear, but it's a lot more subtle than that if we're looking within organizations. So specifically within organizations, not in the marketplace. We get it all the time. Our constant social media is being scraped and manipulated. We're being manipulated to buy products. That's not what I'm raising here as a issue. The issue is specific to organizations with their own employees. you think about the ways that we manipulate that data. In fact, you can see some today, people are monitoring people at work and when they're working remotely. They know when they're getting up from their computer and they're not looking at a screen. Is it appropriate? It's legal, but that's not the question. This is an ethical question.
Ethical,
okay?
exactly.
And it really comes down to the issue of manipulation and benefit. And that either of those, if either we push it too far, we will lose the trust of our employees. The law, honestly, the law be damned. That's always going to be there. Law will always lag our societal expectations within organizations and beyond it. So, and that's why I believe that this is an issue that we need to consider very deeply within our organizations and how we are using the data to manipulate through artificial intelligence for outcome.
Excellent answer, Pip. Very intriguing, very thought-provoking, and you have more questions being thrown at your end to your side in the Q&A sections about HR activities that can be replaced by AI, amongst others. So take a look at those questions first. We thank you for sharing, very insightful. But let's move on to Pascal's pre-recorded video. We have to forgive him because in France, the timing is a little bit on the ungodly hours. So let's hear him out, what he has to say about the future of work. He's one of the top AI players in the market and former McKinsey head of AI. Let's hear him out, okay, via this special recording out of France. Okay, meanwhile, all panelists, can you take a look at the Q&A section? There are 5 open questions. 8 have been answered. Thank you so much, panelists. If you look at the 5 open questions, perhaps you can try to answer and in writing. Then we will go into the interactive part of it later on. Okay, over to you, admin.
This. Hello, everyone. I hope you are fine, and I'm sure you're enjoying this great event. It's a pleasure for me to be part of this wonderful team of speakers. The insights I will share with you today are coming from my new book called Intelligent Automation, Harnessing AI to Boost Business and Make Our World More Human. You can see it on my background. The book has been released 2 months ago on Amazon, and I'm very lucky because it's been Amazon bestseller since it launched. I will talk today about how can we reinvent work with artificial intelligence. Work is a major part of our lives. 1/3 of our life is devoted to it. Work is a key component of our societies. Our world has more than 4 billion workers. However, work breaks many challenges that are becoming more and more complex. In this discussion, I will answer 2 questions. The first one is, what are the challenges facing the world of work today? And how does COVID-19 crisis make those problems even more complex? The second question is, how can artificial intelligence, the most powerful technology of our times, help us solve those challenges? Let's start with the challenges faced by work today. According to the research company Gallup, 85% of the employees worldwide do not flourish at work. They are not satisfied by their work because they think it's too repetitive, tedious, and mundane. As workers, we devote more than 70% of our time to repetitive, routine time-consuming activities, like non-productive emails, meetings, and others. The second issue is, in addition, only a third of the workers currently have access to appropriate collaboration tools and AI applications. Thirdly, for the past 10 years, companies have focused on customer experience. It is time, I think, to take a look now at the employee experience. According to an article published in Harvard Business Review, companies that lead initiatives to improve employee experience are 4 times more profitable than those that don't. AI offers us a unique opportunity to enhance this experience. As an outcome to this, according to the International Labour Organization, work-related stress and the illness that result from it contribute to the death of nearly 2.8 million workers every year worldwide. It's impressive to say that work today kills 40 times more people than wars, twice more than road traffic. There is an urgent need to improve this situation. In this context, what is the impact of the COVID-19? Because of COVID, 3 billion people in the world are currently working remotely due to border closings and quarantines. But none of us have been trained to work from home. Many suffer from isolation, lack of supports, constant distractions, lack of connection, anxiety. This had an impact on motivation, efficiency, work-life balance, creating stress, and affecting physical and mental health. In addition, due to the economic downturn caused by COVID, more than 1 billion people are currently at risk of losing their jobs. There is a need to address this alarming situation. Okay, now that we've painted the issues, I want to share with you how AI can help solve these issues. Based on my experience supporting companies in hundreds of transformations, here are 5 main levers available to world leaders to build the future of work with AI. I call it the 5-fold A artifact. So basically, each of those initiatives start with an A. The first one is analysis. AI helps us to identify opportunities to work better. Taking, for example, the Fitbit or the smartwatches. Same as those tools, AI helps to take the pulse of our professional activity. Thanks to personalized dashboards, AI can monitor the work-life balance, reduce stress, and improve our professional behavior over time. For example, it can recommend breaks in scheduling a day of meeting, or it can suggest to automate some repetitive tasks. This is done using smart platforms that collect data related to our activity on the screen, like our activities on calendar, on apps, on messaging, analyze it, and they create recommendations from it. Examples of such technologies are Worklytics, Workplace Analytics, Time Doctor. The second initiative, starting with an A, is automation. AI can identify and automate a large part of the routine, time-consuming tasks, allowing us to focus on activities with higher added value, but also that are more enjoyable. For example, AI can automatically build a PowerPoint presentation for a weekly meeting or record invoices in an accounting software. AI also helps with email management, sorting and intelligently filtering those emails. It can also help to optimize the meetings with transcriptions, coach or planning of those meetings. Such technologies are UiPath, Cryon, Celonis, Workona, Calendly, many of them on the market. The third initiative, starting with an A, is augmentation. AI can increase the added value of work by working closely with us. For example, AI allows us to analyze millions of data in a fraction of seconds, improving the quality of our decision making. This technology can also promote remote work and team collaboration, as well as identify possibilities for retraining. Such technologies are, for example, IRA technology or Pega technology as well. The fourth initiative, starting with an A, is abandonment. Without knowing it, some of the work tasks that we perform on a day-to-day basis do not correspond to the best practices, and they become obstacle to healthy professional life. Restricting the volume of emails, restricting the volume of meetings are essential. For example, to increase the productivity of work meetings, it is not recommended to invite more than 4 people in the same meeting. Technology helps us, AI helps us to make sure that we do this the right way. Some of these activities should be reduced or even eliminated through regular and personalized support from IA. For example, through the use of a virtual coach. Example of such technology is My Analytics from Microsoft. The fifth initiative that starts with an A is ensuring. Connecting employees, companies, and other market players more closely is the key to building the future of work. In this regard, AI can increase the connection between businesses and job seekers. It can also foster and improve the sociability of employees in a company, allowing them to take care, the one of the others, to take care of their colleagues. Finally, AI could help support a system like universal basic income to reduce inequality between people. An example of such technology is Eightfold, for example. In the future, I hope we will see a new generation of application based on AI, able to bring us to the future of work by integrating those 5 initiatives, those 5 levers together intelligently and seamlessly. As a reminder, those 5 levers are analysis, automation, augmentation, abandonment, and ensuring. The content that I just shared is coming from my new book called Intelligent Automation. It is available on Amazon. Profit from the book sales will be donated to charities in charge of educating people in need to new technologies. Other topics covered in the book include how artificial intelligence can increase companies' efficiency by 20 to 60%, increase customer satisfaction by 50%, save 10+ million lives per year, double our global budget for health or for education, or eliminate hunger forever. Also, how AI can act as a catalyst to reinvent work, education, and our societies. I'm sure you will find it extremely useful and insightful. It was a pleasure to share my passion with you today. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you so much, Pascal. Even though you are not here with us physically or virtually, your spirit is very strong with us here. I can feel the force within you going through the cyber space, and we certainly benefited a lot from your sharing. Yeah, and based on what he has shared, one thing caught my attention was the part about how to level up the inequality amongst people, or those who are disadvantaged or inferior in certain areas. So AI can certainly be used or utilized or configured to basically, through the 5 levers, of course, to basically transform people and level up the playing field, right? And I think this is where I find it very intriguing. I find it very interesting that AI becomes very organic, and it's not just about disruptive that we see in Hollywood movies, but it could be very constructive, very developmental. And this is what this summit is all about, to show the developmental aspects of it, the positive side of it, even though it may not be presented by any hardcore programmers or coders, but we can certainly see how they view the applications of AI in the context of social service, healthcare, manufacturing, consumer, education, HR, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we've come to the session here. How many minutes do I have, moderator? Oh, I'm the moderator. Timekeeper, how much time do we have now? Or have we met our deadline? Hello?
Hi, you have till 11:50. So you're actually 2
Okay.
minutes to the
2
session.
minutes then. Okay, so let's spend the next, because we started a little bit delayed because of some technical issues, but maybe I would like to go around the table and get each speaker to give their thoughts. Probably take about a minute or two to wrap up your presentation, your thoughts about the questions that came in, the answers that you gave, the kind of interactions that we have with each other and amongst one another. Maybe start off with Philippa. Pete, you want to start off by giving a roundup or wrap up of what you have to say about this particular track, and based on the questions and answers that you've seen being channeled.
Sure. First of all, I think we're all having a good discussion, and by all I mean everyone on the line as well. The fact that we are discussing how to move to an augmented human plus machine workplace is a good discussion to have. The mere presence of technology does not do that, though. We must reconsider the design of our organizations, the design of our jobs, the design of how we use technology to make sure that we really do create workplaces that people want to work in. And finally, lean in and participate in the ethical debate. There are a lot of issues that are whether it's data or the use of technology, the equality of technology. Most AI is not suitable for people with eyesight challenges or hearing challenges, let alone other areas. So we need to continue to debate the ethical application of artificial intelligence and the use of data in our society, certainly in our workplace.
I begin to admit that if the issue of trust is not resolved, I think the progress towards full AI adoption will be slowed or will be stunted, right? Because there will always be doubts, skepticism, apprehension about how their data is going to be manipulated, utilized, and all that. So it's about time, the issue of trust needs to be strengthened and needs to be educated, needs to be aligned between the user and the provider, right? So thank you so much, Philippa. That's a key takeaway. Pip. All right, moving on. Maybe I ask Zarina, your thoughts on this?
The adoption of AI has been pretty unequal across the sectors in many countries. And I think practitioners and advocates of AI need to look at how to close the gap so that, we are efficient together, we are productive together. And then I guess only then would the effects, the benefits be cascaded down to the community in a more visible, equal way. I think we have to look at inclusivity as we move forward with it.
Well said, Zarina. Rudmila, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I just wanted to answer one of the healthcare questions, but before that, I would definitely, from this whole webinar, we learned a lot of things, and thank you so much to all the other panelists for all those insightful thoughts. So the impact of AI and automation varies depending on a country's income, level, like a country's demographic and the industry structure. So I think someone from the audience actually asked a question about how AI can be applied to healthcare. So my answer would be there are tons of recent developments that has been going on in the world globally, but Japan, as we know, is actually the manufacturer of almost 50% of the robots in the whole world. And I actually look up to Japan's robotics, and I think they're actually on the top of the game. So Japanese researchers are also developing a surgical robot system with a 3-dimensional endoscope, which actually you can conduct a high-risk surgery in remote mountain areas with no specialized doctors. So I think that's something that is actually like a paradigm shift for a lot of people, because the system is also in use for the operating rooms in the United States as well. And Japan is actually taking a step farther by using it through teletherapy. So where the patient is hundreds of miles away from the doctor actually performing the surgery. And just even to think about that, it gives me goosebumps that people, like a doctor sitting miles away from me, is actually performing a surgery. So with these kinds of technologies, it's out of the world that how we can even imagine stuff like that. And people are actually figuring out a way to do and perform like surgeries like that. So if we actually have if we all are in a positive mindset and we are more adaptive towards the future, I think wonderful things like that can be done not only in the healthcare sector, but in all different kinds of sector. And it's definitely very important for the government to support us. We should have subsidized training for employees who are going to get displaced for these kinds of replacements. So there we can go on and on forever because it's a huge and vast topic, but robotics and AI, I would definitely say, is the more we apply it, the more we are going to benefit from it. And I think that would be my ending note.
Well said, Rick Miller. Zarina, you can see that technology is getting more and more pervasive. It's coming your way. So I'm sure after this event and even after this session, more technologies will be swarming and you know, day and night. And you have
Very welcome.
you have lots of options to choose, yeah, to turn AMP into an AMP.AI. Right. So to close up the session, can I get Anshul to come forward and share your thoughts about how you feel about the future of work and where do you see it going into 2021?
I guess the biggest barrier which all governments, as they write new national AI policies or from a business standpoint also, the number one barrier is this AI skill crisis. And as everybody said, the AI skill is not just technology skills, right, which is a collection of multiple technologies, but much more than technology, right? The ethical issues, the explainability issues, the biases issues, the social aspect of AI, the whole responsible usage of AI. And that's where we need a whole new partnerships, not just public-private partnership, but entirely new way of looking at machines, human-machine partnership, to really reinvent the jobs. Because as somebody said, job is not just job is a combination of human task. And that as the tasks change, the jobs will change. But how do we prepare ourselves better, more responsibly? So purely from a workforce standpoint, that is a number one call to action here, right? Prepare comprehensive AI skills, both tech skills as well as a non-tech skills, to be ready for AI era, which is in front of all of us. Thank you.
I like the fact that you place a lot of emphasis on the ground. That resonates well with us. So we talk about on the ground activity, on the ground action, less of discussing, more on action. Could you envisage a situation where people are just too intimidated or too fatigued with too many programs, too many activities? I mean, look at all the governments, right? They're having all these, you know, AI programs, right, from primary schools to secondary schools. So do you foresee a fatigue, or are people catching up with this, or do you think that the momentum is just right? Do you think maybe it's too fast or too slow right now?
No, it's the lot to be done. The momentum is just building up, I would say. And we have to show role models, not just talk, but walk the talk. So I'll give you one story. I mean, in Singapore, when we did this in ITE Singapore, right, we got a 17-year-old, one boy and one girl, who recognized the problem of their own grandmother forgetting how to take medicine on time. So they created a simple computer vision application to remind grandmother to read from the labels of the medicine in their own local accent to take medicine on time. And when we show this kind of an examples to other workforce, right, and it may be coming from across the sector and not just high-flying computer science graduate, it gives hope to people that yes, AI can be used in a meaningful way. So I guess we need to walk the talk here, everybody together, and not
Thank
just
you.
talk the talk.
Absolutely. So once again, thank you so much, Anshul, Ruth, Peep, Zarina, and of course Pascal back in France. You guys have been awesome. What's going to happen is that we're going to document all the discussion points. We're going to curate and distill the key things that's been mentioned by each one of you, and we're going to put it into a little publication for all the attendees digitally, of course, and also these key points, as we said, are being transmitted into all the live feeds in LinkedIn, Twitter, in short captions, and in the portal itself, where the attendees will be channeled to congregate there and connect with you. So do check out the portal once in a while to see the kind of opportunities, the kind of knowledge seekers that are coming your way. Yeah. So thank you very much once again. Such a fantastic audience and fantastic crowd, panelists here. I appreciate very much. And we, on behalf of MyFinB, look forward to working with you in many ways, in one way or another. All right. So,
Hey, panelists, can I just get you to take a video on? Let us take a picture together before we end the session.
So, audience, if you have more questions in the meantime, please do not hesitate to post them either in the chat Zoom box in the next 10 minutes, which we leave it on for a bit, and we'll curate them, and yeah, we will send it to the speakers themselves if they have to leave, and they will follow up with you later. And of course, you can post it in the portal that you will be given access to. Meanwhile, let's take a group photo together, and we'll keep it as a memory and put it into the various platforms for them to remember the good work that you do. So what do we do here?
Just smile for the camera.
With teeth or without teeth? Okay, now with teeth, yeah? All right. Thank you, guys. Okay, and ladies, of course. Take care and have a good day. Let's catch up again. Yeah. So let's get connected. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, thanks.
Excellent session. Wow. We hope you have learnt a great deal from our distinguished panel of speakers. Thanks for the wonderful moderation, Professor Nasri. If you'd like to get in touch with the speakers, or with the organizer, on any potential partnerships or collaborations, please email us at CE.A.I@myfinb.com or put your contact in the window for us to get in touch with you. We are now ending this session, but don't leave just yet. You can stay on to attend the next one happening at 1:30 p.m. GMT +8 later. The session is called The Big Four Megatrends, How These Are Shaping the World and Industries in the Next 5 Years. It is about how we need to prepare for the next wave and permutations, to adapt and thrive in a digital world for the next lap. Well, that's all folks, and thank you once again. See you in the next track happening at 1:30 p.m. GMT +8 later.